Rip's final scene with John Dutton i.e. was the perfect Yellowstone send-off for Kevin Costner. Rip's Cole Hauser final scene with John Dutton i.e. was the perfect send-off to Kevin Costner and his Yellowstone character despite the controversy over the actor and character's exit. John was last seen alive in Yellowstone Season 5, Episode 8, A Knife and No Coin, the season finale of Part 1. The final Yellowstone season was split into 2 parts, adding to the conflict over Season 5 and the time it took to complete the show's 5th and potentially final outing. Costner's absence as the central Dutton clan member was at the heart of the controversy, significantly affecting Part 2. John Dutton was missing from Season 5, Part 2, after Costner and Yellowstone creator Taylor Sheridan failed to reach a working agreement. Therefore, John Dutton i.e. dies in Yellowstone Season 5, Part 2's premiere, to make everything click in the show's final season. While some found the character's exit a heinous act against both John Dutton and Costner, Part 2 also features a lovely tribute to Dutton in the Yellowstone series finale. The moment somewhat redeemed some of the shortcomings of Costner's original send-off in the show, as difficult as that was. The last time that Costner and Hauser were on screen together as John and Rip is technically in A Knife and No Coin, when the ranch foreman prepares to journey south to Texas with the herd and half the Yellowstone ranch cowboys. John and Rip square up a few details. Then Dutton apologizes to his foreman for the inconvenience, which causes Rip to go away from Beth, Kelly Riley. Rip says, "Sir, it is what it is." Then John bids farewell, reminding the foreman of what's commonly said about being a cowboy, remarking, "If it was easy, everyone would do it." While Costner and Hauser's final scene is a proper cowboy farewell, it isn't Rip's last exchange with John Dutton. In the finale, Rip's final scene with John Dutton is when he buries the rancher after his funeral. Rip digs the hole for John's grave before the ritual, rounding up a few cowboys to help him complete the job. Wheeler also sticks around after John's ceremony to put dirt over the casket, staying behind after everyone has left to send John off properly. Rip is the last to send John off in the finale, which is fitting. First and foremost, Rip buries John Dutton in Yellowstone Season 5, Episode 14, because he is the ranch's foreman. Rip has handled or delegated the bulk of the ranch's manual labor for decades, so digging holes on the property is a job that already fits Rip's job description. Rip delegates the task partly to the other cowboys, who help him make funeral preparations. However, there are more profound reasons why Rip assigns himself the task of finishing the job. Rip burying John honors their connection and ties into the 1883 spinoff. 1883 is the Yellowstone prequel that follows the earliest members of the Dutton family tree as they travel the Oregon Trail from Texas to Montana. In 1883, the characters face a harrowing journey that causes deaths in nearly every episode, with members of their wagon train dying of disturbances or disease. Being pioneers on a wagon train with no infrastructure, when someone dies in the prequel, their loved ones have to dig the hole and lower them into the ground personally. Rip's gesture honors the first Dutton family members. However, the gesture also cements John and Rip's father and son connection. Rip burying John is the perfect touch and arguably the best send-off to the leader because John saw his ranch foreman as a son and eventually treated him like one. Rip putting the final dirt on John's coffin honors the connection between the cowboys. Moreover, Rip's Yellowstone Season 5 final gesture continues a trend revealed in one of the early seasons. Rip plays a significant role in the final arrangements of his family, and what he says to Beth in a different scene adds even more significance to this gesture. In Yellowstone Season 2, Episode 7, Resurrection Day, Beth has Rip meet her on the roof of the family's lodge, where she drinks whiskey and stares at the stars. When Rip comes out on the roof, the future couple squares up their thoughts on God and life, with John's daughter conjuring one of Beth's best quotes from Yellowstone. When Beth asks Rip to take her on a date, she tells him Lord knows he can afford it, because he's been wearing the same 3 pairs of jeans and jacket for a decade. But Rip's money went to burial arrangements, which he presses the foreman on what he spent all his money on. Rip tells Beth that he spent $20,000 on his mom's headstone and $30,000 on his brother's. Additionally, Rip tells Beth that he spent $5,000 on a gravedigger in Forsyth, Montana, to exhume his father's bones, which he threw out the window on the way home, dishonoring the physical remains of the man who murdered his family. Rip's comments show that he feels a strong sense of responsibility for his family's final resting places, which extends to John, whom he views as a father. John Dutton didn't need Rip's financial assistance for his tombstone, and Rip's treatment of the rancher was far from the desecration of his father's physical remnants. Still, it shows how important it is for Rip to be involved in the arrangements. He would probably personally bury Beth, too, if anything happened to his wife, although hopefully we don't see that in the Beth and Rip Yellowstone spinoff. Rip's interaction with the preacher is humorous, yet his insistence on lowering John into the ground shows Rip's sincerity, as does his use of this symbolic shovel to lay all the earth on John's grave. In some ways, John's funeral is a big setup for Beth's final revenge on Jamie, established when she whispers into John Dutton's coffin that she plans to avenge his death. Still, it includes parting words from Case, Luke Grimes, Linnell, Wendy Moniz, and Thomas Rainwater, Gil Birmingham, with all the Dutton Ranch cowboys laying down a flower. Therefore, John's funeral was the most necessary element of Kevin Costner's Yellowstone Season 5 send-off. Still, Rip's treatment added the perfect touch, with the foreman's silence as he diligently began to work, saying all that needed to be said. As the sun dipped below the Montana horizon, casting the Dutton Ranch in a golden glow, John Dutton II sat atop his horse, his weathered face etched with years of sacrifice. The wind whispered through the valley, carrying with it the scent of pine and sagebrush, a reminder of the land he had fought so hard to protect. Beside him, Rip Wheeler rode in silence, his eyes scanning the open plains, knowing this moment was one he would never forget. The weight of the years hung heavy between them. Rip had been more than a ranch hand. He had been a son in every way but blood. And now, standing on the edge of an uncertain future, the two men faced what felt like an inevitable farewell. John took a deep breath and let his gaze linger on the land. You know, Rip, when I first found you all those years ago, I never imagined we'd end up here. Back then, you were just a kid with nowhere to go. And now, you're the man who kept this place standing. Rip swallowed hard, his jaw tightening as he fought the emotion creeping into his throat. You gave me a home, sir, and you gave me a purpose. I'll never be able to repay that. John shook his head. You already have, son. Every damn day. Silence stretched between them, comfortable in its familiarity. The sky darkened, painting the land in hues of deep purple and fiery orange. It was a moment that neither of them wanted to end, but both knew it had to. Beth wanted me to tell you something, Rip finally said, his voice gravelly with emotion. She said if you go anywhere, you better come back and haunt her, or she'll raise hell in your name. A small, knowing smile played on John's lips. That sounds about right. She's as stubborn as they come. Got that from her mother. Rip chuckled softly, but quickly sobered. I don't know how to do this without you, sir. John turned to face him fully, his expression steady and sure. You do what you've always done. Protect this ranch, protect my family. And when the time comes, you carve your own path, Rip. This land is in your blood just as much as mine. For the first time in his life, Rip felt the overwhelming burden of being left behind. It was always John leading the way, always his wisdom guiding Rip through the chaos of the world. But now it was up to him. John exhaled slowly, his tired blue eyes locking onto Rip's. "I ain't got much left in me, son. But I got one last ride left, and I'm gonna make sure this place is still standing when I go." Rip wanted to argue, to beg him to stay, but he knew better. John Dutton had spent his life defying fate, but even he couldn't outrun it forever.